Hi, this is Mike Brown, owner of Death Wish Coffee Company. Welcome to Fueled by Deathcast.
I love Jeff, but sweet and hot.
Death Wish Coffee presents Fueled by Deathcast, the world's strongest podcast. With your hosts, the incredible Jeff and the amazing D-Man.
Welcome to Fueled by Deathcast, everybody. I'm being held at knife point right now. We'll get to why I'm being held by knife point.
There's
in
a
minute.
reason.
Yes,
there's a
there is.
method to this madness.
Yes, I mean it's not just that Dustin's sick of me, although it's a little bit of that.
Well, it's a mix of being sick of you and having a deep love for knives.
That's true. That's true. And those two things go hand in hand. For those of you keeping track at home, this is episode 93 of the podcast. And as always, I am the incredible Jeff.
No, I'm the amazing D-Man.
And we would love it if you followed us on social media. Our social media of choice is Instagram, but we like to Facebook and Twitter from time to time as well. It's very easy to follow us. I am at Jeff Wish Coffee.
And I am at Death Wish Dustin. Hey, I think Christian Slater got a few new followers last week.
I think we helped that out. I'm pretty excited about that.
Why was that such a thing?
I don't know.
Whatever.
If you guys aren't a fan of this show on social media, I just want to let you guys know, first and foremost, this podcast is not only an audio podcast, it is a video podcast as well. You can find this over on the Death Wish Coffee Company YouTube page as well as Facebook. You can find all the podcasts on deathwishcoffee.com/deathcasts. But we also do a weekly TV companion show every single week that's a companion to this podcast. We have a lot more fun over there with some fun topics and stories to tell. And last week, you decided to just make a whole thing about following Christian Slater on Instagram, and we put it on the show. And I actually had a couple people comment on my post saying that they were following Christian Slater now.
I had people commenting on my Instagram, sending me DMs about Christian Slater and whatnot. It was madness.
So one more time, at the Real Christian Slater.
I think it's just at Real Christian Slater.
At Real Christian Slater. So please go follow him. We really want to get him above 100 million followers. It would be amazing.
I mean, the dude is still kicking. He's doing great stuff.
He's still doing really great stuff, and we love him. Another person we love is our good friend Brock Powell.
BrockVox.com.
He's the voice actor behind the voices on this show and 1,000 voices out there in the world. Speaking of social media, follow him on social media. He's Brock Vox across all platforms. He's always doing some cool stuff, and he's got some stuff he hasn't even announced towards the end of the year, which you guys are going to be really excited that he's a part of, and we love him for it. Speaking of coming up with some new stuff, that was a
good segue.
Terrible segue.
Just stumbled into the next topic.
On this Saturday, if you're listening to this episode as it comes out this week, on Saturday,
It's the biggest holiday of all, Jeffrey.
September 29th.
It's when Santa, not Claus, it's
Santa Coffee?
Santa Coffee comes down the
Chemex.
The Chemex and
We're
fills
making this
all
up
of
as we go along, people.
fills all of our Chemexes with the most delicious, strongest coffee
we
ever.
cannot speak the English
Why do
language
we even
today.
podcast?
I don't
Who
understand.
lets us do this? They should just take this room away from us. What are we doing, Jeff?
I don't know, but National Coffee Day is September 29th. It's this Saturday. We're really excited about it. And we want to get you guys involved too. So if you're listening to this before September 29th, put it on your calendars, and all day long, let's get Death Wish Coffee trending. All you got to do is make a post, make 100 posts that day, use the hashtag National Coffee Day, and tag Death Wish Coffee in it. You know, make a post about the coffee you're drinking or the music you're listening to or the cool stuff you're getting into on a Saturday, and talk about it in the context of National Coffee Day. We're doing some fun things with a lot of our influencers, a lot of the different businesses and people that we work with are going to be posting about Death Wish Coffee on National Coffee Day. And if you guys are a Facebook user, you might have seen a lot of different people make specific Facebook frames where your profile pic can say, you know, like the favorite sports team you like or the movie that's coming up that you're really excited about. It makes a frame for it. We're making a frame that's going to celebrate National Coffee Day and Death Wish Coffee, so you can use that with your profile pic on Facebook. I feel like I've angered you with that with that information.
That sounds like another nonsense social media thing that's going to be dead in a week. But
actually, what's funny is
Cool.
it's been going on for 2 years now.
oh, they're really just beating that dead
And
horse, huh?
well, they've opened it up for everybody to be able to create them. They have a whole creator now that's very easy. Like you can just upload a photo or upload a PNG file and just make it in Facebook. So it's a lot easier than having to have like a graphic designer to do it. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to see everybody's profile pic kind of celebrate National Coffee Day on National Coffee
Well,
Day.
as skeptic as this face gets, I'm on board. I'll do it.
Good. I hope you do.
Because I'm a company man.
Yeah, well, regardless of that, it's a fun day to celebrate coffee. And what's a better day than National Coffee Day?
Should I try to drink more coffee on that day?
I think we should all try to drink as much coffee as we possibly can.
I mean, I can't drink that much coffee without having like serious palpitations. I'm one of those people. I'm sorry. I'm just not a calloused coffee drinker.
Let's make it happen.
So 2 cups on
Yes.
Saturday.
Yes,
It's-
and I'll drink
It's going
20.
down.
And I'll drink 20.
I know you're nuts. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Secret code unlocked. Discount of death.
I know we mentioned it before, but the Chemex.
Mm.
And this is the perfect time to buy Chemex before National Coffee Day because this
Yeah.
is the best way to brew coffee. And you can get 15% off of it until October 3rd. That's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
With the bundle with the discount code STEEL.
Steel. STEEL. And that 15% off gets you the whole bundle, which is the Chemex, the filters, a pound of coffee, however you like it, whole bean or ground, and
point to it, but
yeah,
I'm doing a bad job.
and brand new for those of you guys who didn't know, we have this awesome cork coaster now for your Chemex, which is really rad.
Yeah, those cork coasters are really neat.
Yeah,
I
they're,
like them
they're
a
all
lot.
branded. It's a brand new part of the bundle. And if you guys stick around to the end of this episode where the update usually happens, there'll be even more that might be added to this bundle coming very soon. But I'll leave it at that. You gotta listen all the way at the end of this episode for details on that. But I love this bundle. I keep saying that I'm going to get one myself because I still don't own a Chemex because more often than not, I'm drinking Chemex either at an event or at work, and at my ritual, my weekend ritual with my wife is a French press.
Yeah.
But I really do want to own this someday, and I think this would be the perfect time to do it because you get a kick-ass discount all week.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, you know why I love the cork coaster so much?
Why?
Because it doesn't let your Chemex slide all over the
Slide it
counter.
all, right.
Now, this was a big deal for my mother because at the time she was living on a houseboat and she couldn't have a Chemex because it would just slide off the table. And I
You
was
couldn't
like,
have a lot of things.
yeah, I was like, hey, Mom, we're coming out with these awesome cork coasters. So she has one now.
So all you houseboaters out there, this is the perfect bundle for you guys. But yeah, perfect way to celebrate National Coffee Day as well. Get that Chemex bundle all week long. And the reason why it's Steel is because this week our guest coming up very shortly on this podcast is the owner and creator of Cold Steel Knives, Lynne Thompson. And that's actually Dustin's everyday carry knife there with the Cold Steel.
Yeah, it's the Recon 1. I only stabbed myself with it 3 times so far. And I'm not joking. I stabbed myself with it this morning. It is very sharp.
If you've been listening to this show, you know that we a couple weeks ago went out to L.A. and met with a ton of different people, and the first person we met with was Lynn. Actually, that was the first episode that we put in the bank, and it was awesome. They brought us up to their facility in Ventura, California, and we got to tour the Cold Steel Knives facility, see their operation firsthand, and talk to Lynn about not only creating the company, the ups and downs of owning a knife company, and it was really impressive because he is a connoisseur of the history of weaponry.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is deep into the development of these products. Every
he is.
step of the way, he is testing these weapons. He's putting them under pressure. He's making sure that they don't break, that
Yeah.
they perform perfectly.
Yeah.
And he even brought us out to their little ninja training facility
Yeah.
out back, and we threw some sharp shovels at targets and whatnot. And
Yeah.
he taught us how to chuck spears, too, which is pretty awesome.
Which was incredible because there's different ways, either the Zulu method or
Yep.
the Roman method,
Yep.
which is an arced method, and I've never thrown a spear in my life.
No, I had no idea what it was going to be
And
like.
It's kind of hard. It's a weighted thing
Yeah.
that you have to really follow through with it. And we've got footage of all that in this episode, and a really cool conversation with Lynn. And it was amazing to see how a facility like that works together. And we love those guys at Cold Steel. If you guys saw the recent contest that we did with the Cold Steel War Axe, it was such a great response from everybody out there in Death Wish land that hopefully we do something like that again very soon, because I really like this company. And like I said, it was amazing to be welcomed to their facility and talk to their owner. So mugs up this week for this week's death guest, Lynne Thompson of Cold Steel Knives.
The Fueled by Death guest.
Well, I want to start by thanking you for taking your time to talk with us. Your facility is amazing.
Thank you so much.
I was saying on the drive up here to Ventura that I don't understand why we haven't thought about it earlier, but there should always be a collaboration between Death Wish Coffee and Cold Steel, because the world's strongest coffee meets the world's strongest knives. I think it's just a match made in heaven.
I agree.
And I want to talk a little bit about the company at large. I'd like to start kind of like in the beginning. I'm curious how the inception of this company started back in the 80s. Like, what was it like? Was the idea always, let's start and make the world's strongest knives, or did that kind of coalesce after the company started?
Well, it actually has kind of an interesting beginning. I started Cold Steel because I broke two of my competitors' knives, one right after the other. And I said, I could do a better job, and I must do a better job.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Brazil and lived in very rural areas in Brazil where there isn't easy resupply.
Right.
And if you break your knife, you may be out of luck for a long time. And since it's man's oldest tool, there's really a need for a super strong knife.
Yeah.
And we set out to manufacture that. And I didn't know anything really about knife making other than I collected custom knives at the time. But I'm self-taught. I learned. And you're sitting in my conference room right now in the library with 2,200 books on knives and swords and martial arts.
Yeah.
And this is how I learn, is I do, and I read and I study.
Yeah.
And I watch.
Oh, that's the best way to learn. I mean, that's how I mean, any other way you're going to learn it from somebody else who learned it that way. So you're kind of getting it firsthand, that
That's right.
style. So you've been a martial artist for a long time. Were you a martial artist before you started getting into knives?
Absolutely. I started boxing in 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So my dad got me a book by Nat Fletcher called How to Box.
Yep.
And I studied that book, and my mom used to get mad at me because I'd wear out my shoes shadow boxing all the time. I was up on the toes of my shoes on the asphalt,
Yeah.
shadow boxing all the time, and she'd get mad because I'd wear out the shoes so fast. So yeah, I started out in boxing, and then judo, and Shotokan karate, and then Wada Ryu karate.
Yep.
And then I got introduced to Filipino martial arts, and I've never looked back.
Really? What was it about Filipino martial arts that
Well, I was interested in knife fighting,
Yep.
and they had a knife fighting art.
Yes.
And I'd never seen that. I'd read 2 other books on knife fighting before that, but Dan Inosanto's book on the Filipino martial arts was the one that really kicked it off for me, and Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do book also. I read
Yeah.
that when I think I was a senior in college.
Yeah.
And those books had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
And I've been a Filipino martial artist ever since, I guess, my senior year in college.
Oh, wow.
That's very cool. So is the Filipino martial arts, is that what got you interested in knives to begin with?
No, I've been interested in them since I was a little kid, even in Brazil. I lived in Ceará,
Yep.
which they used to call the state of the gun and the knife.
Ah.
And the knife was an ever-present tool and weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it clicked with me at the earliest age. I have pictures of me in 5 years old in Brazil with wooden knives my dad carved for me. My dad was quite handy and good with tools and woodworking and stuff, and he'd carve me wooden knives. So I'd go around with a whip, which was a long belt that I'd got a hold of somehow, and my wooden knife, and I was quite the terror.
Sounds it.
Did you ever have to use your martial arts skills in real life? Have you ever had to?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah, yeah. Any memorable moments?
Probably none that I want to talk about here.
Okay, fair enough.
I have a few scars.
Yeah, yeah. Any good fighter does, right?
Yeah. If you've never been hit, you've never been in a fight.
Right.
It's true. It's true.
So.
So you start from a great premise then, like you want to create a better product. You can, so you want to start this company to do that. When did that? Was it? I want to kind of delve into like the beginning of the company. Did it take off immediately? Was it accepted in the community? Because
No.
there are a lot of competitors out
It
there.
was a huge struggle. In fact, I'll go out on the limb here and say the tactical knife industry that exists today, the demand, was started by myself and Almar.
Oh wow.
And a little bit Kershaw
Yeah.
in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
There was just very, very few offerings in tactical knives, what we'd call a tactical knife today.
Yep.
And I was the first one, cold steel, to break the $100 price barrier and start selling commercially made knives for over $100. And it was a huge struggle, like the Tanto point that everybody recognizes today.
Yep.
Yeah.
I introduced that to the American public.
Yeah.
So what makes that Tanto knife more unique than your usual Tanto?
Well, our American Tanto that I designed has
Yeah.
a very thick spine,
Uh-huh.
and the spine runs down to about a ½ inch of the terminal end of the tip itself. So you have a lot of stiffness in the blade, and then normally, sometimes for some applications we'll flat grind it, but normally we hollow grind it. So you have a stiff spine, a hollow ground blade, and then a secondary grind at the point, which we call the yakote in Japanese sword nomenclature. At that area, we combine the hollow grind with the flat grind, which forms a secondary point. So you've got your primary point at the terminal end, and there at the bottom, you've got a secondary point that's just awesome for snap cuts.
Okay.
So when you hit somebody with that secondary point, you flick your hand, and that secondary point engages the target. It splits that target into a big V.
So it does more damage.
Does a lot more damage, and
Wow.
actually will penetrate 1/4 inch leather with other blade styles won't go through that with a snap cut. But because that secondary point is there, it maximizes the damage that you can do with a very non-committed blow. See, what people don't really realize is the snap cut's the fastest cut that you can make,
Yeah.
and the one that you can make and get out with the least amount of time. So you can do a lot of damage in a microsecond. And when we're talking a microsecond, we're talking a 20th, a 30th of a second.
So it's an efficient killing machine.
It is.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a Tanto was awesome, and its long suit is because of that yakote and the stiff spine and the fact the spine runs close to the tip. The tip is enormously strong compared to other tips.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely to break.
Yeah. Were you experiencing breakage with Tantos that you were using before that?
No, I didn't use a Tanto. That's why I
Right.
invented it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
I borrowed parts from Japanese swords and stuff,
Yeah.
but our American Tanto was my invention. And I was using a double-edged knife, which I have a lot of affinity for a double-edged knife, but a lot of the points are very weak.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I broke the points off, both of them. And we've done studies where if you break off even a 1/4 inch of a double-edged blade like that, you're going to get a big reduction in penetrating power.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a big deal to break your point off.
Yeah.
And the Tanto point, the most you can normally break off that is maybe 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
If you do break it, you don't break much.
Right.
And it's still viable.
Right.
But a lot of blades, when you break the tip off, they're just, they've got an edge left, but they're too blunt at the end to penetrate.
Right. So how do you stay innovative with a tool that has been around before fire was invented, right? Weapons have been around forever. Like, it was the next thing that we invented after throwing our first fist, right?
Right.
Well, what's the next best thing? Using a
Stone.
tool. How do you stay innovative on something that's been around and been used for hundreds of thousands of years?
Well, I constantly try to delve into history
Yes.
and introduce our customers to historical designs that sometimes we update them and sometimes they can't be improved on. For instance, the kukri.
Right.
If you look into Nepal, there's lots of different tribes there, and they carry different sizes and shapes of kukris. Some I think are better than others, and we pick the ones that we like the best. We do a ton of testing to find out what works the best. So we're all about performance. It's hard to make something look really good and perform real well.
Right.
My wife said, "Why can't we make really sexy knives like the competitors do?" And I said, "Because they won't cut and they don't stab."
And then what's the point?
What's the point?
Now, and today,
pun intended.
there's a dumbing down of the knife industry. You see a lot of companies coming out with these blunt, fat points that kind of are dropped, and they've got a short clip on them and stuff like that. And they're trying to make them less threatening.
This is probably sacrilegious here, huh?
Yeah, I mean that point there is like a mini cleaver, if you will. and you really can't stab with it.
No, that's definitely not a stabbing tool.
So, and yours isn't sharp enough to be a straight edge, and the handle's really slick.
Yeah, it's kind of a pathetic knife, but I like the look of it, and it cuts.
And that's what a lot of knives are today. It's about looks and feel over performance until you need to use it.
Yeah, right.
And now you're pissed.
Yeah.
Because that cool bitchin' little knife that you thought was so badass just folded up and cut your finger when you were in an emergency.
Yeah, right.
You know, people always ask me, well, Lynn, why do you carry such big knives? Like, I'll pull this one out. I carry 3 of these all the time.
Wow.
I said, do you want me to save you with this or with this?
Right.
If you're bound up and you're tied up and you're compromised in some way, your life's at stake, do you want me to pull out this and cut you free or that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's no contest.
I always ask people, they say, why do you carry such a big knife? Well, you want me to save you with a Leatherman tool or a 5.5-inch serrated Vaquero from Cold Steel?
And that's a sexy looking blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about because that's the sexiest looking blade.
We're talking about how do I stay innovative. This comes from the Turkish Yatagan.
Okay.
Which Sir Richard Burton said, he wrote the Book of the Sword, was the most perfect cut and thrust shape ever devised by man. It's got an S-curve, a slight S-curve to it, but you notice the point is very acute and lines up in the center of the handle.
Yes.
But it has an inward curve and an outward curve, and this inward curve gathers. So if I block something with this, I catch it here.
Right.
If they try to escape, the hump or this curve catches them going out.
Right. Wow.
But it's enormously pointy too. So it thrusts as good as a dagger.
Yep.
Right.
And it cuts like a sword.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things that will be forgotten, and you're kind of bringing them back up to light.
They have been forgotten.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many people interested in performance today.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to give a shout out to the American Bladesmith Society in the early 80s and to Dan Ragney, a master smith. They caught my attention because they were interested in performing. And I thought, I want to be like that.
Right.
And that's why I came out with Sanmai knives and Sanmai steel, because I could come out with a laminated blade that would perform the feats that these custom bladesmiths were doing with their knives at a price that people could afford. You know, or you could put a knife in a vise and you could bend it 45 degrees, it doesn't break. And you could cut through a 1-inch rope with it with one swing. These are some of the things that these guys were pioneering in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And today, you're seeing kind of a dumbing down of performance. No one talks about it. You know, I'm kind of pry in the knife industry because I'm interested in lock strength.
Right.
Super interested in it. Because
Yeah.
when you think about it, this knife's on a hinge, right?
Right.
And the only thing stopping that razor sharp blade from slamming shut on your fingers
Is that
this lock.
Yeah.
And people don't think about that. The most important thing when you pick out a knife is how strong is the lock.
Yeah.
Not how cool it looks, not how sexy it is,
Yeah.
not how tricky that you can play with it and all that stuff. Because when you go to use this thing for real sometime, and it folds up and cuts your index finger and severs one of those tendons, now your finger is like at half mast the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to be really pissed if you're musicians, if you do anything with your hands.
Yep.
That index finger, if you're a gun guy like me,
Yeah.
to injure my trigger finger, that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
spent $1 million educating this finger. You know?
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
super educated, you know, and you don't want to cut that. So I'm always thinking about my customers' fingers and stuff like that. So that's why we have such a passion about lock strength. We're always trying to improve it and find better ways to
Yeah.
make the knife safer.
That makes sense. Well, I feel like we live in a world, you know, it used to be weapons were used all the time, right? Everybody had carried a weapon and everybody was thinking about weapons. And now we've moved into this soft period where nobody's really concerned about that except for, you know, guys like you. So a lot of people have lost touch, but I love what you're doing because it's keeping us in touch with with probably the most important tool that humans have ever come up with.
Well, we say that we're a warrior company. You know, the warrior is the pillar of the community, not the pillager.
Right.
We should be the example, the leader, the standard, the guide, the protector, and never the one that takes advantage or abuses.
Right.
And so we feel that about our knife company also. We're constantly trying to promote the warrior ethos, you know, and try to bring that back in America. It's going away.
Yeah.
Men are becoming more dumbed down,
Yeah.
and we don't like that trend.
I heard a saying.
We want to go against it.
I heard a saying that easy times create soft men create hard times create warriors. And overabundance of warriors create soft times, and it's this constant cycle that we're in. And I think we're just in that area where technology and the comforts of life have just kind of taken over, and men have become a little bit, humans have become a little bit softer and more used to the comforts of life. And
well, before World War II, over half the Americans lived on farms.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And one of the successes that we had in World War II, one of the greatest things we brought to that effort was our farm kids, both men and women, with that tough work ethic and mindset and enduring discomfort and hardship to accomplish their goal. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the huge advantages we had. And now most of us don't live on farms. Probably 95% of us don't live on farms. Right. And so we're not out there making our bread by the sweat of our brow, so to speak.
Yeah.
I grew up with a farmer's ethics. My dad was the first person in his family for probably 300 years that didn't farm.
Wow.
Maybe that's too long. Cool. My dad's grandmother, White, came over on the Mayflower. Her family can be traced back to the Mayflower. So there's been somebody in my family history here since the beginning of the country.
Wow.
And they've all farmed, and he was the first one that didn't farm for a living. So I grew up, he was a farm kid from International Falls, Minnesota, and grew up, in really bad winters and hot summers and out there in the fields working. And they had a dairy operation also. So, cows, as I hope have to be milked twice a day.
Yep.
And they don't wait for anybody. They have to be milked.
Yeah.
It's a dairy operation is a 7-day-a-week nonstop pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And so that's what I grew up with. Like I was growing up on a dairy farm.
Wow. So Cold Steel must do a lot for military, because you're creating usable tools. And I've seen shovels that the unfolding shovels that you guys make, that must be used a lot in the military, right?
Well, our shovel really is a copy from the Spetsnaz Russian shovel.
Okay.
And we do have some people carrying it. We have a lot of people in the wood crafting and survival sections of our customer base that like it a lot, and I enjoy it. I read this book called Spetsnaz in the late 80s, early 90s. I know that I took example to Australia in 1991, 2 Russian models. I had a friend of mine that was in the State Department somehow get his hands on 2 Russian Spetsnaz shovels, and I took them to Australia with me and tested them. And I came back and improved on them. I thought the handles were made out of pine, and I made mine out of hardwood, and I increased the blade thickness by about a third. So I made the blades thicker and kept the shape though, and that's how our Special Forces shovel came about. I read a book about it. I was intrigued that they used it for so many different things. I took it to Australia to see if it worked, and I cut down trees, and I did some hunting with it, and I hacked a lot of stuff with it, and I stabbed a lot of stuff, and I said, hey, this thing is badass. And so I decided to manufacture it. And that's how lots of things start.
Yeah. So you must do a lot of testing in general on everything that you
We do. And then when I go on these trips around the world, I'm always dragging 100 things to test. So sometimes, it's never it's not really a holiday for me, because I've got an agenda of all these things I'm going to test and try out and see if it works or not.
Yeah.
Like I took a sai, which is an Okinawan and Filipino weapon. It's got a long blade.
I know.
It's got 2 little points at the base, and they use it in all the martial arts and stuff. And I wanted to see how it would work. Well, I took it to Australia and tried to employ it, and I was totally unimpressed.
Yeah.
The tapered point gives you almost no percussive energy when you hit something with it. It's only good for stabbing and blocking. Now, as just a defensive tool to use to block a sword or a knife with, or a club, it has a use there. It's got big quillions at the base and stuff that are really useful. But all the stuff, when I see people hitting people with it percussively, I thought, that not work. There's not much going to happen there, because I tried it a lot and I was massively unimpressed with it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. From my understanding, so Karate Do is the way of the empty fist, right? And it started off in Okinawa because they banned weapons, and the only people who were using weapons were the criminals. The people. So then the villagers
and the samurai that were oppressing them.
Yeah. So the villagers needed to learn how to defend themselves. So they started using farm tools as weapons. So sais, from my understanding, were used for baling hay. So
they were
grabbing hay and then flipping it over and bailing it. And that's why you have bow staffs, because they were just using walking sticks. So they were learning to use
The
farm
oar,
weapons as
they would
weapons.
use the oar from their boat, and that
Yep.
that became a popular weapon. You know,
Yeah. Well, that's what Miyamoto Musashi used to
carved
take
an oar.
down.
Made a boken out of it.
Takwan Soho? No. What was his name?
I know the guy with the long sword.
Yeah. The
That
swallow
extra long
swing.
sword,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much history
yeah.
there. So I can't imagine that a Sai would actually hold up to actual weapons that were innovated to perform at, peak performance.
Well, I think it was like you said. They pressed into service the best they had.
Yes.
And then they specialized in learning how to use it. But I mean, I think there's an over infatuation with that particular weapon today. You see it a lot in weapons competitions, and it hasn't proven itself in the field to me.
No.
But like, there might be somebody that's really awesome with it that would prove me wrong.
Yeah.
So I can't entirely judge it by my lame ass.
Yeah.
I always say that, don't judge me by your lame ass. So with my abilities, what I try to do with it, I wasn't impressed, but maybe somebody else could make it hum.
Yeah.
I'm so interested because you are such a connoisseur of the history of weaponry and really want to just delve into all of that. And Cold Steel as a company now makes a myriad of products that aren't just obviously Cold Steel knives. Was that something in the beginning of the company was that the vision always, or did that kind of like coalesce as you were
It changed
ground?
in 1990
Okay.
when I wanted to make other things that I didn't think were mainstream,
Uh-huh.
that wouldn't be accepted by everybody,
Yeah.
but I still thought there was a market for it. That's when I started Special Projects.
Yeah.
And so then I started making things that were kind of my own interest, and I still do that. So not everything I make at Cold Steel is financial success. Some of
Right.
it I make because I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
And-
what makes this company authentic. It's because it's really what you're interested in.
It is, and some people, I say to my wife, about half the people get me and half the people don't. And but if I was in the major leagues, I'd be batting 500, and
Right.
I'd be like the bomb.
Right.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So I'll take half.
yeah.
I'm not greedy.
Yeah.
I don't want to deliberately offend people, but I'll take if half the people don't like me and half the people like me, I'm good with the half.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'm honored and grateful to get half of them to like me and appreciate what I do.
Yeah.
The other ones don't.
Well, I think it's good to have that ethos and to not be. Obviously, you want your company to succeed, and you're doing those things to make your company succeed. But you're not pigeonholing yourself and being like, well, I can't make this product or pursue this idea just because, like you said, it won't be financially great. You want to pursue that. You are a connoisseur, as your library shows, of this type of knowledge, and I think it's just so incredible that you can bring that out again to people because it's being lost on people. I think that's
Like baseball bats.
Yes.
We make baseball bats.
Yeah.
Am I a great
those.
baseball player? No.
But it's a great weapon.
Here's the thing, though. I read an
Honestly.
article in LA Times about baseball bats breaking
Uh-huh.
and the danger it is when the wood chips fly and splinters
Yeah,
fly and stuff
totally.
like that. And I've always been interested in baseball bats, primarily as a weapon. And I said, I'll make my own baseball bats out of plastic, and mine won't break. So we started out in the baseball bat business. Now, my brother-in-law was a professional baseball player and pitcher, and I asked him if he wanted to get involved. He says, no, that'll never make any money. Well, turned out to be quite successful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now we have, I think, 4 or 5 different model baseball bats.
It's incredible. And again, it would be if you never wanted to try and pursue that, it never would have came to light. That's
Who would have thought baseball bats?
exactly that's inspiring. Another thing that's interesting about Cold Steel is your relationship to the entertainment industry. How your products have been used by stuntmen and by in movies and television and stuff like that.
Since the 80s.
Was that initially, did that kind of just snowball from that point, or how did that relationship kind of come about?
Well, I think the first one started with Patrick Swayze and Red Dawn.
Oh,
No.
Love that
Right.
movie.
Because
Where,
they're using a lot
Mr.
of buck
Milius
knives and stuff like that, right?
Recognized he came to Soldier Fortune convention, and he had an affinity for what we're doing, and he put our knife in there.
Yeah.
And then we got into Platoon.
Yep.
And then it started snowballing from there. And like right now, our our axe gang hatchet is Rick's favorite weapon.
Yep.
And you see all of our weapons everywhere through Badlands, and
Yeah.
you see all the new cool TV shows and movies are featuring cold steel, and we're really happy with that. And when people say, "Why do you live in California?" Well, this is the mecca of martial arts.
Yeah.
It really
This is the mecca of the entertainment
Yeah.
industry,
Yes.
and it's expensive and it's very politically oppressing, and it's not really weapons friendly.
Right.
But then there's millions of people that still appreciate what we do, and we're not willing to abandon them.
Yeah.
And run.
Right.
So we just haven't run. I'm not much of a runner.
Yeah.
I'm more of a stand in place and face it guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
a good way to be, though, for sure.
So, have you had anything that you went to innovate or create or anything that didn't quite work the way you wanted it to? Maybe a weapon that you had an idea for and it didn't quite pan out the way you expected it to.
I had a crushing loss in the gun business.
Really?
I came out with a micro mini revolver, and I hired the wrong people, and I didn't supervise it. I had it in another state far away, and I made lots of errors.
Yeah.
And I sold it, and then the people I sold it to couldn't pay me and reneged and went bankrupt. So I took the loss on that. So yes, I tried.
Yeah.
But I didn't give it my all, and I didn't do it myself, and I hired it out, and I made a lot of classic mistakes. That there's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which is one of the best books ever written on investing, and it's very simple and uses analogies to explain it and stuff. And I violated all the principles in that book, and I normally don't do that.
Yeah.
And my wife, and the worst thing is my wife warned me. And she was right.
Sometimes they are.
That subject comes up, I said, "Oh, you were right."
Yeah.
So I took quite a beating in that operation, but I still love guns. you
Yeah.
know. I tell people I'm a martial artist and a gun and knifeaholic that owns a knife company.
Would you ever do it again? As
Oh,
far
yeah.
as starting a gun business?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I tried to make it in America, and I tried to hire all local people. I didn't import it. It was such a crushing experience.
Yeah.
Maybe sometime I will, but I still in my mind, I'm still licking my wounds over that, I think.
Yeah.
You're a little gun shy from it. Oh, another pun.
Man, you're full of them today.
A little gun shy.
Well, the one question we ask all of our guests on this show, and I'm very curious for your answer, is through all of it, from the beginnings of this company and to the successes that you've seen to today, and everything you've been able to achieve, not only with Cold Steel, but in your life in general, what fuels you to keep going, to keep innovating, to keep doing the amazing things that you're doing?
Well, I love my customers.
Great answer.
I love my customers, and I tolerate my competitors. I work with my competitors just enough to achieve our common goals.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're on the other side of the board.
Right.
And I'm on this side of the board.
Yeah.
So I don't care. I don't really care whether they like me or not. I'm working for my customers, so I'm constantly looking to find things that they might also have an interest in and promote those, like spear hunting.
Yeah.
100 years ago, bow hunting was in its infancy, just getting started. In the 20s and 30s, Pape and some of these other guys that were hunting then with homemade broadheads and homemade bows and hunting lions in Africa, they were looked at as like crazy men. I mean, absolutely out of there. And now, bow hunting is a huge sport.
Yeah.
It's a giant boom recently, for sure.
And you've got all kinds of celebrities involved in it and stuff. And, I hope that maybe someday spear hunting will catch on the same way. So far, it hasn't.
Yeah.
But I'm still out there trying, because I think spear hunting is the ultimate challenge for a hunter. There's nothing more fair to an animal.
Yeah.
You've got to get within 10, 12 yards of him.
Right.
He's got all the advantages of that range, because you're in his circle of hyper alertness. This is the range all predators attack from. So if he hears a noise that's 10 yards away, he's off like a shot. He knows, ooh, that's really bad. 60 yards away, what's going on over there? But 10 yards away, this could be really bad.
Yeah.
And he's out of there. So, to hunt with a spear is really difficult to do. But man's been doing it since the beginning.
Yeah.
And it connects us with being men and women still.
Yeah.
We are hunters and huntresses.
Yeah.
So anytime you can take a game animal with a spear, you should, go on a 3-day party, because it's quite an accomplishment.
Yes.
And validation of your skill and your courage and your tenacity and your strength, and all those things have to come together to do that.
Yeah, because that's something that if you fail at, you might not ever come back from that.
Well, have you seen my buffalo charge?
No.
Yeah, we'll play it for you.
Yeah.
I speared an Asian buffalo in Australia about 6 or 7 years ago, and he charged, and I killed him at 3 feet with my pistol in full charge.
Ooh, wow.
That must have been terrifying.
Well, it wasn't until afterwards that I got a little excited.
That's how it
about
happens,
It
right?
hits you like, oh, wow, I was in that.
You have conditioned reflexes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My instructor, Guru Dan Santo, says that your muscles get brains. As you train them, they protect you without your conscious thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I used a technique from Filipino martial arts, a footwork technique called, now I can't say it. Anyways, it's a sidestep and turn. And I used that technique as I drew my pistol and went sideways. I had to go sideways to dilute the charge. Anytime you have forward pressure, if you back up, that forward pressure takes advantage.
Yes.
When you go sideways, that forward pressure starts to diminish. As they try to catch up and make that turn, it diminishes and starts to decrease. And if I'd gone to the back, that buffalo would have killed me. If I backed up like everybody else did, I went sideways, drew my pistol, turned around as I was running away from him, turned around and shot him, and by then he was like 3 feet away.
Wow. So you use bullfighter techniques.
Humbak
pretty much.
Bayawas. That's the technique.
Okay.
Humbak Bayawas.
That's exactly what a bullfighter would use. Like
Yes.
they teach you, if you back up, you're going to get gored, you're going to get launched. It takes a lot for them to turn and then recharge. So
Right.
that sidestep kind of changes their momentum entirely.
A lot of times they'll use a feint too. If you see
Yeah.
the cowboy
This way
bullfighters
and then that
to
way,
save the bull rider, he'll make a big feint to draw him one way,
Yep.
and then he'll step and then step again and get next to his shoulder.
Yep.
And sometimes he actually has to turn his back to him to get to the right spot. But
Yep.
yeah, you always want to run towards their tail, so he's constantly turning.
Yes. Yeah.
And-
So is there anything up and coming from Cold Steel that you're excited about that you can talk about?
We have such a huge lineup for next year. We're going to
Really?
shock the knife world.
Really?
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
any
exciting.
hints as to how that's going to happen?
I know there's lots of stuff that's
I'd
secret out there that we don't.
I really would like to keep that secret because
Okay, that's fine.
Fair enough.
we don't want to give our competitors a leg up. It's still close enough,
Yeah.
or far enough away that if I say stuff, they could copy it or at least have the direction to go. And maybe that sounds arrogant, so forgive me, but I just don't want to teach them.
No, I
It's-
imagine
what
the
I'm gonna do
competition in the knife industry is intense because you all must be very competitive individuals because you're dealing with mostly warriors.
And there's more competition than ever. In the last 2 years, there's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of knife companies
yeah,
start up, and then all the custom knife makers.
yeah, there's a lot of those.
And everybody that's a custom knife maker now has a website.
Yeah.
And you know what? Good for them.
Yeah,
I owe a lot to my success to the help custom knife makers gave me when I was a young man.
Yeah.
And I'm enormously grateful.
yeah. Well, even our owner welcomes competition. I mean, you're bringing more attention to a genre that you created pretty much. So it's never a bad thing. You're just bringing the boom of the knife industry to fruition. And that's what I've seen, like the whole Instagram side of things for custom knives is just gone through the roof.
Competition pushes me to change and advance and to grow.
Yes.
And if I always try to train with people that are as good or better than I am,
Yes.
and I'm always trying to catch them.
Yes.
Like my regular training partner Ron Balicki is better than me in many things.
Yes.
He's one of the most accomplished martial artists in the world, but I'm breathing down his neck. I'm always trying to catch him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's certain elements of my game that are really good, and there's other ones that I'm constantly trying to improve on.
Yes.
And same thing in knife fighting. Our knife fighting techniques keep growing and growing and growing and growing because we fight it out. That's just one thing that, when you see going to my gymnasium and you see all those aluminum weapons in there.
Yes.
Like right now, my staff is making 60 new aluminum weapons for me.
Wow.
And so whatever idea I have, I make 4 aluminum weapons, and then we start fighting with them and see whether they need to be improved or modified. Does it really work, or is it bullshit? And then you can find a lot by fighting it out.
Yeah.
And so, we believe in what Bruce Lee said. If you want to learn to fight, fight. It's very uncomfortable.
Yes.
I can remember about 14 years ago, I was really working on my ability to fight at extreme close range under enormous pressure. So I'd put my back to that banana bag in there and have Ron just tee off on me. And it was miserable because I couldn't step back and I couldn't go to the side. I had to deal. And now, I can't say it's my favorite, but I'm super comfortable there.
Yeah.
Because I've done it so much and I've been whacked so many times that I don't get hit very much anymore.
Yeah. Well, it translates to real life, too, as far as, like, thinking clearly through chaotic situations. Jiu-jitsu taught me that, 10 times over. And going into the corporate industry of the coffee world, I use that day after day after day. It's chaos every day at Death Wish for me. And I can think clearly.
It's interesting you mentioned jiu-jitsu because I spend almost all of my time practicing ground fighting on my back.
Yeah.
If I'm on top, it's easy.
Yeah.
I get people that are much heavier or much more skilled, and I spend all my time, because if you can escape from your back and you're comfortable on your back, you're not ever afraid on the ground.
That's true.
And so I spend a lot of time ground proofing myself. You know what that is, So I don't get smothered and crushed like that. I know how to alleviate that pressure. And we have the saying, where there's light, there's air.
I like that.
And if there's no light, how to make it, Like lots of times your face is being smothered, so you can just take your hand and
I've
press
done
it
that.
in like that, and all of a sudden there's a crack there, and there's some light there. Oh, there's air coming in there. I can breathe that air.
Yeah, I know.
So
that
where there's
very
light,
well.
there's air.
Yeah.
Where
I know
there's
that
air,
very
there's
well.
life,
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, it translates to real life every day, man.
Yep.
And you can see it. You can see it in the company. You can see it in this awesome building. I can see it in you. This is so cool what you have here. I really
thank you
appreciate
so much,
you having
guys.
us here.
We really appreciate you having us here, and really appreciate what you're doing with your company and with your customer base and the community at large. I think.
And I appreciate your company and all your customers too.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, the crossover is endless. The world's strongest coffee and the world's strongest knives. Nothing makes more sense than that, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have a lot of future years to work together.
Yes.
Excellent.
I look forward to it. All right. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Cheers.
This has been Fueled by Deathcast, a Death Wish Coffee Company podcast production. Thanks for listening.